You're not really one of us." The words rang out louder than the clatter of silverware and the background hum of family chatter. Forks froze mid-air. Glasses trembled slightly in nervous hands. My cousin Jenna blinked, looking like she just realized what had escaped her lips, but she didn't take it back. Everyone else just stayed quiet, even my mom, especially my mom. I stared at the candlelit centerpiece, trying to process whether I'd heard her wrong, but the silence that followed told me everything. My chest tightened. This wasn't a slip. It was a verdict. And it wasn't just Jenna. I could feel it in the way Aunt Rachel refused to meet my eyes, in the way my uncle cleared his throat and reached for the mashed potatoes, pretending nothing happened, in how my mother looked down at her plate, silently complicit. I was 23 years old. I had grown up attending these Thanksgiving dinners, bringing pies, setting the table, laughing at bad jokes, helping with the dishes. I never questioned where I belonged until tonight. I stood up, my chair scraping hard against the wooden floor. "Excuse me," I said, not to Jenna, to my mom. She finally looked up, but instead of defending me, instead of denying it, she just whispered, "Maybe it's time you knew." The cold air slapped my face as I stepped off the porch, blinking back the sting in my eyes. The echo of Jenna's words still rang in my ears. "You're not really one of us." I had heard cruelty before, but this was the kind of sentence that stays in your bones. The porch lights flickered behind me. Laughter resumed faintly inside, as if I had never existed at all. I shoved my hands into my coat pockets, jaw clenched. I didn't know where I was going, maybe just down the block, away from the house where love came with conditions. Then I heard it. Soft, hesitant footsteps behind me. The squeak of the screen door. "Sweetheart," came a trembling voice. I turned. Grandma Margaret stood at the edge of the porch, wrapped in her oversized wool shawl. Her silver hair was pulled into the usual neat twist, but her eyes were different tonight. Wilder, brighter, fiercer than I'd ever seen. "I need to give you something," she said. "I don't want another pity hug." I snapped, harsher than I meant. Not after that. "It's not a hug," she whispered. "It's the truth." She reached into her shawl and slowly pulled out an envelope yellowed, creased, and singed on one corner like it had barely survived a fire. My name was written across the front. Not in Grandma's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. "Grandpa's." She nodded. "He wrote this the night before the first Thanksgiving you spent with us. I found it weeks after his funeral, hidden under the loose floorboard in his study. When I showed it to your mother, she trailed off, her voice catching. She tried to burn it. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stepped closer. Why? Grandma looked over her shoulder, then slowly descended the steps, careful on the uneven concrete. She handed me the envelope, then placed both her hands over mine. They were cold and shaking. "She was afraid of what you'd learn." I swallowed hard and peeled the flap open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded 3 times. The ink was slightly faded, but the script was elegant. I took a deep breath and read, "To my granddaughter, the one who never asked for anything but deserved everything." I stopped, heart pounding louder than the wind in my ears. I read further. The words poured over me like water breaking through a dam. "I know the family will one day question where you came from. They shouldn't, but they will. That's the kind of bloodline we have, cold at the roots. But not me, not Margaret. You were ours from the day you arrived, swaddled in nothing but a prayer and a name. I never cared where you came from, only who you became. Margaret and I fought to keep you safe, to give you the name, the home, the warmth. But if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means they've already made you feel like a stranger in the only house that ever meant anything to me." My hands trembled. The letter kept going, but my vision blurred. I looked up at Grandma. "What does this mean? I'm not adopted, right? I'm not... What are they even trying to say?" Grandma stepped back. "You were family from the moment you were brought to our door. Not everyone saw it that way. But your grandfather and I, we did. And that letter. That's what he left behind when he realized they might one day try to erase you. Erase me. Her voice dropped. He knew your mother would never accept you the way he did. A hollow laugh escaped me. She raised me. She tolerated you, Grandma corrected gently. She provided for you. Yes. But she never accepted you. Not really. And after your grandfather died, she made sure the rest of them forgot what he fought for. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of pumpkin pie and turkey out from the house like some cruel perfume. I took a breath and unfolded the rest of the letter. Don't let them decide your worth. Blood doesn't make someone family. Loyalty does. Love does. And you, my dear girl, gave us more of both than most of them combined. I wiped my eyes. Something hot and angry was swelling in my chest, grief. Yes, but also a sharp edge of betrayal. How many times had I sat at that same table, laughing along, washing dishes after dessert, helping set chairs only to be treated like a placeholder? How long has she been hiding this, I asked? Since the month after the funeral, Grandma whispered. She waited until I went to the cemetery one day, then tried to burn it in the fireplace. But I came home early. I pulled it out with the tongs. She pointed to the burnt edge. I didn't know what to do. She added, I should have told you sooner. But you were still so young, and I thought maybe things would get better. Maybe if I stayed quiet, they'd learn to love you the way we did. But they didn't. No, she said, looking down. They didn't. We stood in silence. The porch light flickered again. Then Grandma touched my cheek. You need to know something else. I turned toward her. She reached into the folds of her shawl again, this time pulling out a small key, old, brass, and taped with a crumpled label. Your grandfather had a safety deposit box. I wasn't supposed to open it unless something like this happened. But I believe now is the time. Inside, you'll find the original draft of his will, the one your mother lost, along with something else. What else? Her lips trembled into a faint smile. Proof of everything. The word lodged in my throat. Why now? Grandma's voice was firm. Because tonight they told you you're not one of them. And I think maybe that's the best thing they ever did. She held both my hands now, her grip tighter, despite her frailty. You don't need them to claim you. Your grandfather already did. I sat cross-legged on Grandma's guest room floor, the letter still trembling in my hands, rereading every word under the soft yellow light of the antique lamp beside me. It had been over an hour since we came back inside. No one had come to check on me, not Mom, not Jenna, not a single soul from that table. Good. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted the truth. The guest room smelled like lavender and cedar, and the walls were covered in pictures, most of them of Grandma and Grandpa. Birthdays, holidays, and faded school portraits of cousins over the years. I scanned the collage, looking for myself. There I was sort of a small wallet-sized photo in the corner. Not framed, just tucked between two overlapping frames like a placeholder. Funny, I never noticed how few pictures of me there were compared to the others. Something bothering you? Grandma's voice was soft behind me. I shook my head. I'm just counting how many times I'm almost in this family. She sighed and sat slowly on the edge of the bed, hands folded over her lap. I was afraid you'd notice that. Did they always resent me, I asked? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced at the bookshelf across the room. Third shelf. That red album with the cracked spine. Take it. I stood, crossed the room, and pulled the album free. The leather cover was stiff and slightly dusty, and a gold-foiled title read Family, 1998-2003. I returned to the floor and opened it carefully. The first few pages were filled with photos, cousins at the lake, birthday cakes, baby showers, all the typical family moments. Then, midway through, something strange. Several pages had been torn out. What happened here, I asked. Grandma hesitated. That's where your pages used to be. I looked up at her. They were taken out, I asked. By who? Your mother, she said quietly. After your grandfather died. But why? She didn't want reminders. I stared at the jagged edges where the pages had been ripped. Glue residue still held bits of the missing photographs. Some captions were still there. Then I saw it, a line of faded ink beneath one spot. Me and Lily, her first Christmas. I blinked. Lily, my name? A chill ran through me. She erased me, I said slowly. From the family album? She tried, Grandma said, but not everything's gone. She stood and moved toward the closet, pulling open the door and reaching up to the top shelf. Her fingers brushed through scarves and shoeboxes until she pulled down a flat cardboard box wrapped in plastic. She returned to the bed and laid it down beside me. This, she said, is the one I hid. I unwrapped the plastic and opened the box. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me as a baby wrapped in a purple blanket, me at a park, sitting on Grandpa's shoulders, me with a birthday cupcake, icing smeared across my cheeks, Grandpa clapping beside me, and one picture that didn't fit. It was older than the rest. I was maybe 3, curly-haired, wearing a pink jumper I didn't recognize, sitting on the lap of a woman I had never seen before. The woman looked young, maybe in her early 20s. Her arms were wrapped around me tightly. Her smile wasn't staged. It was full of something raw, fierce, protective. Love. Who is this? I asked. Grandma sat beside me and stared at the photo a long time before answering. Her name was Eva, she said, and she was your birth mother. The room shrank. I couldn't breathe. What? She was the daughter of a close friend of your grandfather's. She continued. Eva was a kind soul, strong, but struggling. She had no family left, no one to help her. When she got pregnant, she was alone. I gripped the photo, hand trembling. She came to us once, when you were just a few months old. She asked for help. Your grandfather brought her food, money, everything he could. She lived in a small apartment in South Haven. Then, one day, she didn't show up for her regular call. We went to check. She had passed. My voice cracked. From what? Complications from pneumonia, Grandma said gently. It was sudden. You were still in the crib, crying. I closed my eyes. She left a note. Grandma said. It was barely legible, but it said, "Please take care of her. Her name is Lily. She has no one else." So we did. I couldn't speak. We brought you home, she continued. We filed the guardianship and later adopted you officially, but not everyone approved. My mother. Yes, she said. Your mother resented it. She thought we were too old to raise another child. She said you were a burden. Your grandfather threatened to cut her off if she didn't accept you. She smiled in public, but behind closed doors. She never gave you a real place in her heart. I stood, pacing now, heat rushing to my face, and everyone else. They followed her lead. Rachel, Jenna, even Paul. They all acted like you were some outsider we took in out of pity. I ran my fingers through my hair. But Grandpa, he left me the house. The letter says he left something for me. He did, she said, but your mother made sure the will was updated. She had influence. Your grandfather was sick at the end, medicated, confused. They claimed he changed his mind, but he didn't. I turned toward her. So what now? She stood slowly, opened the drawer in her nightstand, and pulled out a brass key. This goes to the safety deposit box downtown, she said. Your name is on the authorization. He added it when you were 10. I wasn't supposed to open it unless something went wrong. And this counts. Tonight, she said, they told you you weren't family. That counts. I took the key, its cold metal heavy in my palm. Then I picked up the photo of Ava again. I stared at the woman who'd loved me enough to give me away to strangers she believed would care for me, and I realized something that made my throat close. She was the woman I saw crying outside the house when I was 7. I remembered it vividly now, her red scarf. The way she stared up at the window, tears streaking her face. I thought I had imagined it. A dream, but it had been real. She came back once, I said. Grandma looked surprised. You remember? I saw her. We sat in silence, the photo between us. I had spent my life wondering why I felt like I was trying to earn my place at the table. Now I understood. I never lost my place. They just tried to hide it. The house was nearly silent by the time I left Grandma's room. The clatter of silverware had long faded. Someone had cleared the table, but I hadn't heard a single knock on the door. Not a check-in, not a whisper. Typical. I walked barefoot down the hallway, the carpet muffling my steps. My heart still thudded in the aftermath of everything Grandma told me. The photo of Eva stayed tucked inside my sweatshirt pocket, close to my chest, as if her presence might steady me. The family's laughter from earlier seemed like it belonged to another lifetime. As I passed the living room, I heard them: Jenna, Aunt Rachel, and my mom. Low voices, bitter tones. They must have thought I was asleep. She should have just stayed quiet. My mom said, "Grandma always has to make everything dramatic." She brought out the letter Rachel asked. A beat of silence, then a scoff. "I told you we should have burned it properly," my mom muttered. My legs locked in place. "I can't believe she actually kept that trash," Jenna whispered. "Seriously, who keeps a letter that tells you to treat a foster kid like royalty?" My ears buzzed. Foster kid, trash, royalty. Every word felt like a slap. "I knew this would come back to bite us," Rachel said. "And if she goes digging through that deposit box, she won't." My mom cut in quickly. "She doesn't even know it exists." Another pause. "She does now," Jenna said. Grandma gave her the key. I saw panic, silence again. Then Mom's voice, low, steely. "Well, then we'd better get to it first." I backed away slowly, one step at a time, retreating into the hallway shadows before they could notice me. My hands were sweating, my breath shallow. They were going to try to beat me to the box. Whatever Grandpa had left proof. Inheritance. The real will, they wanted it gone. Destroyed. Forgotten. Like me. I turned sharply, heading back to Grandma's room. She was already sitting up in bed, reading with her glasses low on her nose. "They're going after the box," I said breathlessly. She didn't even look surprised, just nodded and set her book down. "I thought they might," she said. "That's why I had the documents moved." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "I told Mr. Thorne, the lawyer, weeks ago that it was time to act. He's been holding the original contents in his safe at home, just in case. All we have at the bank is a note telling you where to find him." A slow exhale escaped me. "You knew this would happen." Grandma's voice was calm, but firm. "I didn't know. I prepared." I crossed the room and sat at the foot of her bed, the adrenaline now crashing into exhaustion. "They really hate me, don't they?" I said, voice quiet. "They don't hate you," she said. "They hate the version of themselves they see in you." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She shifted, looking at me carefully. "You were never meant to follow their script. You questioned things. You didn't beg. You didn't become bitter. You became kind. That threatens them." I let that sink in. "Do you think Grandpa knew they'd try to erase everything I asked?" She nodded. "That's why he wrote the letter. That's why he added you to the safety deposit box. He didn't trust your mother or Rachel. He trusted me. And now I trust you." "I just don't understand," I said, frustration rising. "What do they gain by denying me, by cutting me out?" "The money." "Partly, but also the power." She said, "If they admit you were loved more than them, protected more, chosen, they have to confront the fact that love isn't something they control." The weight of it hit me like a freight train. All my life, I'd tried to fit, to fold myself into the corners they allowed me, to not be too loud, too present, too demanding. I thought if I played by the rules, I'd earn their respect. But they never wanted me to follow the rules. They wanted me to disappear. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the yard was dark, moonlight stretching across frost-covered grass, the same place I'd played tag as a kid, the same backyard where Grandpa taught me how to pitch, the same porch swing he built for me one summer when I broke my arm and couldn't go swimming with the others. That swing was still there. I felt like that swing, kept around, but no longer in use. "I want to go see Mr. Thorne," I said. Grandma smiled softly. "Tomorrow morning. He's expecting you." I turned back toward her. "Why didn't you just give everything to the police or a judge?" Because that's not what your grandfather wanted. She said he didn't want a courtroom battle. He wanted you to choose what to do with the truth, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. A long silence passed between us. Then I walked to her side and knelt. "Thank you," I whispered, "for not letting me burn." She placed her hand on my head and said, "Thank you for still standing." We sat like that for a long while, until the house settled into full silence. No more whispers, no more threats. Just two women who had refused to be erased. Later, as I lay in bed with the letter under my pillow and Eva's photo tucked beside my heart, I thought about the hallway conversation about how they spoke of me like I was a stain they couldn't scrub out of the family portrait. They didn't realize I wasn't a stain. I was the part that gave it contrast. I stared at the photo of Eva the next morning as the car rumbled quietly down the road. Grandma sat beside me, dressed in her usual Sunday best even though it was a Monday blue skirt, pearl earrings, gloves, dignity wrapped in grace, always. She'd insisted on coming with me to meet Mr. Thorne. "I want to see your face when you hear the whole story," she said. The morning fog hadn't lifted yet. The sun was trying, peeking through soft clouds, but the chill clung to everything. I tucked the photo back into my coat, right next to the key she had given me the night before. It felt strange carrying both one, a piece of my past I never knew I had, and the other, a doorway into a future I hadn't planned for. "Do you remember the day Eva came to the house?" I asked, watching the trees blur past the window. Grandma nodded slowly. She was shaking. Her hands wouldn't stop. She didn't want money. She didn't want pity. She just wanted someone to see her. She paused, then added, "She looked exactly like you." I didn't respond. I didn't know how to. Grandma glanced over. "You want to know what scared your mother the most." I looked at her. "It wasn't Eva," she said. "It was the fact that your grandfather loved Eva's baby you without hesitation. That kind of love, unfiltered and free, terrified her, because she had never received it from her father." I blinked. Wait, Grandpa was distant with her. He was strict, Grandma said delicately. He came from a generation that thought love meant survival, not softness. Your mother always wanted his approval, and when he gave it to someone else so easily, someone not from her blood, it broke something in her. She took it out on me. She took it out on everyone. You just became the symbol. The words twisted inside me. I wanted to hate her. I really did. But what I felt was more complicated pity, sadness, confusion. Had my entire childhood been shaped by someone else's unmet need? The car pulled into the driveway of a modest brick house at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was small, but tidy, with a mailbox shaped like an old legal scale and a porch covered in potted succulents. Mr. Thorne met us at the door. He was older than I remembered, bent at the shoulders, glasses thick, white mustache neatly trimmed. "Lily," he said, eyes softening. "You've grown." I hadn't seen him since Grandpa's funeral. I barely remembered him then, just another man in a gray suit shaking hands. He led us into his home office, a warm space filled with books and the smell of cinnamon tea. On his desk sat a fireproof box. He gestured to the chair across from him. "I've kept this for 16 years, he said, unlocking the box with 2 separate keys. "Your grandfather handed it to me with strict instructions. Not until she asks. Not unless they try to take what's hers." He opened the lid and pulled out 3 things. A copy of the original will, a sealed letter with my name, a small velvet pouch. I reached for the will first. It was dated 6 months before Grandpa passed, months before the one the family presented to the court. I flipped to the final page, scanning the allocations. "To my granddaughter Lily Jameson, I leave the house on Willow Street, my savings account at First County Bank, and my private journals because she is the one who understood my silences without needing to fill them." My heart pounded. The house, the journals, the account, all meant for me, but none of it had reached me. "They said the will had been updated," I murmured. That he changed his mind near the end. Mr. Thorne's eyes met mine. "Your mother and aunt came in with a new draft a few days before the funeral. I questioned it, but your grandfather was gone. Legally. It stood unless someone contested. And no one did. He shook his head. Margaret feared it would tear the family apart. But he asked me to wait, to hold this until you came. I looked at Grandma, who said nothing, just offered a gentle nod, letting me decide what to feel. I picked up the velvet pouch and opened it. Inside was a locket, an old gold oval with initials etched on the back, E.M. Eva May, Grandma said softly. I opened it. Inside were 2 tiny photos. On the left, Eva, smiling, radiant, wild curls in the wind. On the right, me barely a year old. I didn't know he had this, Grandma said, eyes misting. I clutched it in my palm. It felt like a heartbeat. Finally, I reached for the sealed letter. It was written in the same looping script as the Thanksgiving letter. I tore the seal gently. Lily, if you're reading this, it means the people I trusted with my legacy failed you. I'm sorry. I tried to make it easy, but the truth is easy doesn't last. I needed you to find your own fire, to ask, to question. That's how I knew you'd protect what matters. The world will always try to sort people by blood and borders. But love ignores all of that. You were my choice, my joy, my beginning again. I folded the letter, hands trembling. Mr. Thorne cleared his throat gently. You have decisions to make. The current will stand legally. You'd need to challenge it. But this, he gestured to the documents, will carry weight, especially with my testimony. I don't care about the money, I said quietly, or even the house. Mr. Thorne nodded. I care about the truth, I added. Grandma reached across the desk and gently placed her hand over mine. Then it's time we tell it. The ride back was quiet, but it wasn't silence. It was the kind of quiet where things settle, where truth doesn't roar. It resonates. I held the original will in my lap, still trembling slightly from what it meant. Not just that Grandpa left me the house or the account, but that he saw me. He trusted me to carry something forward that no one else in the family had earned. Grandma glanced over as we passed a familiar street sign, Willow Street, the house I had always thought of as theirs. Not mine, not even ours, just theirs. Until now, he started drafting that will after your 14th birthday, Grandma said, breaking the silence. Why then? Because you stood up to your mother. Remember when she snapped at you for spilling apple juice on the carpet? I smiled faintly. I was crying. I thought she was going to slap me. She was going to, Grandma said softly. But you looked her in the eye and said, I'm not scared of you. I'm sad for you. I stared ahead. Your grandfather heard it from the kitchen, she continued. He said he hadn't been that proud since his Navy days. Said anyone who could see pain and answer with pity, not rage, was someone worth protecting. The house came into view so warm and ordinary looking from the outside. No one would guess it had been the epicenter of a quiet war. When we pulled into the driveway, I spotted Rachel's car parked on the curb. Grandma sighed. I figured they'd come. We stepped out. My hand instinctively went to my pocket, touching Eva's locket-like armor. The front door opened before we reached it. My mother stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You went to Thorne, she said, skipping hello entirely. Yes, I answered. He gave me the truth. You have no idea what you're doing, she snapped. You're digging up things that should stay buried. Grandma stepped between us. She's digging up what you buried. Rachel appeared behind her. This is ridiculous. Margaret, that will was replaced. It's not valid anymore. Funny, I said. That's not what the letter said. My mom's face stiffened. I pulled it out slowly, the original copy, and placed it on the foyer table between us like a dropped match. My voice was quiet but clear. Grandpa left the house to me, the savings account, and his journals. Rachel scoffed. You're going to throw away the family over a draft. That draft had Thorne's witness signature, I replied, and his personal testimony. Not to mention it predates the updated one you filed while Grandpa was in palliative care. Mom took a slow breath, as if trying to control herself. You don't understand what that man put us through, she said. Grandpa. She nodded. He never respected me, never treated me as an equal. He made it clear he wished you were his daughter instead. My heart paused. There it was. The real reason. You resented me because he loved me freely, I said. Don't flatter yourself, she hissed. You were a project, a cause, a way for him to feel like some kind of savior. I took a step forward. Then why did you fight so hard to hide it? She didn't answer. Grandma spoke gently. Because she knew love is power. And once he gave it to Lily, she couldn't control the narrative anymore. Rachel muttered, This is a waste of time. Let her have the stupid house. It's falling apart anyway. It's not about the house, I said. It's about the fact that you rewrote a dying man's wishes for your own comfort. Prove it. My mom dared. I will, I said. In court, if necessary. That landed like a slap. For the first time, she looked afraid. Not because of the money, but because the mask was cracking and I wasn't backing down. Grandma touched my arm. You don't owe them rage, sweetheart. Just clarity. I nodded, then turned to my mother. You may have erased my photos, but you can't erase his words. I'm not going away. Not anymore. I walked past her and up the stairs to pack my things, not out of defeat, but because I finally realized I didn't need anything from that house anymore. I already had what mattered. My identity, my truth, my voice, and I was going to use it. Packing should have been easy, but it wasn't. Not because I had too much stuff, but because I had just enough to make it hurt. The clothes I bought with my own money, a faded sketchbook from high school, a stack of cards Grandpa had written me over the years, still smelling faintly like pipe tobacco and old paper. I stared at the top drawer of my childhood desk, hand hovering. I knew what was in there. The one thing I had kept hidden even from myself. A letter I wrote when I was 15. A letter I had meant to give to my mother. 4 pages, front and back, begging for her to see me, to talk to me like a daughter, to love me. Even a little. I never gave it to her. She wouldn't have read it. I sat on the edge of the bed and unfolded the brittle paper. Dear Mom, I know I'm not yours by blood. I hear the way you speak to me differently. I notice the way you light up around Jenna, but not me. I try to do things right. I try not to cause trouble. But I feel like a shadow in this house. I blinked hard. Sometimes I wonder what I did wrong. Why I never earned your hugs. Why you stopped asking how school was. I know Grandpa loves me, but I want to know if you ever will. I folded the letter up again once, twice, and dropped it into the trash bin. Not out of bitterness, but because I no longer needed her response. A knock came at the door. I expected Grandma. It was her. My mother? She stood in the doorway like a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong memory. Her expression was unreadable, something between resignation and control. I heard you're leaving, she said flatly. I wasn't aware you noticed I existed. Her mouth twitched. That's not fair. I stood slowly, crossing my arms. No, it's not. None of it was. She looked around the room. I raised you. I fed you. I kept you clothed. And emotionally abandoned me in every other way. I said, That's dramatic. It's honest. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. You don't know what it was like. Having Dad shove you aside for a child that wasn't even his. I flinched. He chose me. That's what made it worse. Her voice cracked just slightly. The first fracture in her armor I had ever seen. He never looked at me the way he looked at you, she said. He was proud of you. For what? For being born to someone else, for being helpless and needy and loved. I finished. She froze. That's what you couldn't handle. Right, I continued. That someone else could be loved without earning it. That I didn't have to work for it the way you did. And that he saw me. Even when you refused to. I didn't refuse. You erased me from photo albums. You let people talk about me like I was nothing. And when Jenna said I wasn't really family, you didn't correct her. You just looked away. She sank onto the bed. I didn't know how to be a mother, she whispered. You could have learned. I said, if you wanted to. She looked up. Do you hate me? No, I said, but I'm done chasing your approval. She nodded slowly. It was the first honest gesture I'd seen from her in years. I didn't know he left you the house, she said quietly. Yes, you did. You just didn't care, she sighed. What are you going to do? I'm going to claim what's mine, not just the property, the legacy, the truth. I walked to the closet and pulled out my duffel bag, slinging it over my shoulder. She didn't stop me. Lily, she said just as I reached the door. I turned. You were a better daughter to him than I ever was. And just like that, she broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. She didn't cry in front of me, but I knew she would when I left. I didn't stay to see it. Downstairs. Grandma waited by the front door. Everything all right? She asked gently. I nodded. Everything is clear. She smiled. A little sad. Truth doesn't always feel like freedom at first, but eventually, it's the only thing that does. We stepped out into the morning sun, and I felt lighter not because I had escaped the weight of my past, but because I was finally naming it, owning it. I had spent my life asking for a place at the table. Now I knew. I was never meant to ask. I was meant to build my own. The next morning, the courthouse parking lot was nearly empty. A light rain had started to fall, misting the windows of Grandma's sedan as we sat in silence. I watched the droplets race each other down the windshield, feeling oddly calm, not angry, not scared, just ready. I clutched the manila folder containing the original will, Grandpa's letter, and the notarized copy Mr. Thorne had kept hidden for years. Each page felt like a loaded weapon, but the kind that didn't destroy, the kind that revealed. You don't have to go in alone, Grandma said from the driver's seat. I know, I said, but I need to. She smiled, hands folded tightly in her lap. I'm proud of you. I leaned over and kissed her cheek, then stepped out into the rain. Inside, the air smelled like carpet cleaner and old paper. I walked straight to the probate clerk's desk, the echo of my shoes a steady reminder that there was no turning back. I'd like to request a review of a contested will, I told the clerk, holding up the folder. She raised an eyebrow. Do you have standing? I opened the folder and pulled out a copy of the original will, laying it flat. The clerk scanned the page, pausing at the highlighted clause. To my granddaughter Lily Jameson. And then her eyes jumped to the notarization and the accompanying affidavit from Mr. Thorne. I'll get the judge's office, she said softly. 30 minutes later, I found myself seated across from a probate officer, Ms. Alvarez, a woman with gray-streaked hair and kind but piercing eyes. She flipped through the documents carefully, lips pressed into a firm line. You understand this isn't a guarantee of reversal, she said. I do, I replied. But these signatures, the dates, and the witness affidavits make this a very serious matter. If these hold up to verification, the court may reevaluate the current estate distribution. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. It's not about the house. It's about what they did to silence him. And me. Ms. Alvarez tilted her head slightly, then pushed a form across the desk. Fill this out. We'll open a formal investigation. It may take weeks. That's fine, I said. I've waited my whole life. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking, slivers of sunlight stretching between gray cotton. Grandma was waiting in the car, knitting something in her lap. She looked up with that same expression she wore when I graduated high school, quiet pride wrapped in patience. How'd it go? They're opening a review, she smiled. Then it begins. I slid into the passenger seat and exhaled deeply. I never thought I'd be the one fighting for a man's voice after he died. Grandma chuckled. You were always the only one listening to it when he was alive? We pulled away from the courthouse. The silence in the car wasn't empty anymore. It was full of meaning. Later that evening, as we drank tea on the porch, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Jenna. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Jenna, Grandma asked gently. I nodded. She wants to talk. She might be worth hearing, she said. Even a whisper of change is still change. I texted back. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at Willow Street. The next morning, I stood at the edge of the front porch, Grandpa's old swing creaking in the breeze, and watched as Jenna pulled up in her little red SUV. She stepped out slowly, uncertain. There was no makeup on her face, no smug smile, just a girl who looked a lot younger than she had at Thanksgiving dinner. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey!" We stood there a beat too long. Then I nodded toward the porch. She climbed the steps and sat on the swing, gripping the armrest like it might anchor her. "I was awful," she said. I didn't speak. I said something cruel. She continued, but I didn't say it because I believed it. I said it because I'd heard it so many times. It felt normal. That got my attention. From who I asked. She looked away. My mom. Your mom. Family parties when you weren't around. They'd say things like, "She's not really one of us," or "She was just Charity." I never questioned it. I should have. I studied her. Then why say it out loud, I asked. Jenna blinked. Because you looked so calm, like you belonged more than I ever did. I hated how much he loved you. I didn't steal his love. I know that now, she said. He gave it to you because you were the only one who saw him as more than what he provided. The rest of us treated him like a bank. You treated him like a person. I let that sink in. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out something, a crumpled Polaroid. I found this in Mom's photo box, she said, holding it out. It was me, maybe age 5 or 6, wearing a party hat, sitting on Grandpa's lap, both of us mid-laugh. It looked effortless, honest. Thanks, I said, taking the photo carefully. Are you really going to fight the will? Yes, she nodded. Good. Then she stood. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to start with truth. As she turned to leave, I said, Jenna. She paused. You always had a seat at the table. You just never sat in it. She gave me a look I couldn't quite describe, somewhere between regret and hope. Then she left. Back inside. I placed the Polaroid next to Grandpa's journals on the mantel. The photo frame had dust on it. I wiped it clean with my sleeve. I didn't need everyone to like me. I didn't need revenge. What I needed was this. Proof that love, once real, cannot be undone. Not by lies. Not by omission. And certainly not by bloodlines. The photo stayed on the mantel. I passed by it that evening as the light turned golden in the windows, Grandpa's laugh frozen in time, my own 6-year-old smile untouched by the weight of everything I now knew. I kept thinking about what Jenna said on the porch. You looked like you belonged more than I ever did. It echoed in my mind, not as a compliment, not as an accusation, just truth raw and unfiltered. The next day, she came back. I wasn't expecting her. I heard a knock on the kitchen door just as I was pouring tea for Grandma and myself. When I opened it, Jenna stood there again, no umbrella, hair wet from the drizzle, eyes shadowed like she hadn't slept. I know I said what I needed to say yesterday, she began, but I realized that wasn't true. I stepped aside without a word and let her in. She hesitated in the doorway, as if waiting for someone to drag her back out. Instead, Grandma looked up from the table and smiled. There's always enough tea for one more. Jenna sat down slowly, the wooden chair creaking under her like it was protesting her guilt. I found something else, she said, pulling out a folded sheet of paper. It was in my mom's desk. I think it was supposed to be shredded. She slid it across the table. It was a printed draft of Grandpa's original will with red markings, strike-throughs, handwritten notes in the margin, remove Lily's portion. Replace with Rachel's second property. House goes to Karen, review wording. The handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. I felt my stomach twist. Where did you get this? I asked. Jenna looked down. She asked me to shred it after the funeral. I didn't look at it then. I thought it was old paperwork. I only found it again because I was searching for something in her safe this morning. Grandma took the paper gently and studied the notes. She tried to rewrite history line by line, she murmured. Jenna nodded. And I let her. You were a kid, I said. I was 16. Old enough to know what silence costs, she replied. For the first time, I saw it not just guilt, but shame, heavy and lived in. Why are you giving this to me? I asked. Because she told me yesterday that if you win this case, she'll never speak to you again. And I realized I don't want to be like her. The room went still. I used to think family was about backing each other no matter what. Jenna continued, even if it meant lying. Or pretending. But maybe it's about correcting each other. especially when we're wrong. She looked at Grandma. I'm sorry for the way I treated her. She said, I know, Grandma said softly. You can't rewrite the past, but you can edit the next page. We sat in quiet for a moment. Jenna wiped her hands on a napkin, fidgeting. Do you think she'll ever forgive me? I answered honestly, I think it doesn't matter. She looked startled. You're not doing this for her forgiveness. I said, you're doing it to stop carrying a version of yourself that isn't true anymore. Jenna let out a shaky breath. You sound just like him. I smiled. That's the best compliment you've ever given me. That night, I added the marked-up draft of the will to the growing evidence folder, between Mr. Thorne's sealed copy, the letters, and now Jenna's admission. It was starting to feel real, not just morally, but legally. And yet, that wasn't the part that gave me peace. It was something quieter, something I saw when Jenna leaned in to hug Grandma before leaving. It was the look on Grandma's face. Not victory, not relief, but release. A slow loosening of a secret she'd been carrying for far too long. 3 days later, I submitted the additional documents to Ms. Alvarez at the probate office. Her eyes widened when she saw the margin notes and handwriting. We'll schedule a hearing, she said. You'll likely need to testify. Are you prepared for that? I nodded. I've been preparing my whole life. Back at the Willow Street house, I stood in Grandpa's study, the room no one else ever entered after he died. Dust lay thick on the bookshelves, but everything was still exactly how I remembered the old map of the world on the wall, his framed navy photo, and the dented chair he always claimed was just broken in right. I sat down and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside, I found something I hadn't seen before, a sealed envelope addressed simply, "For when you're ready." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Lily, there's a strength in you that the rest of them never tried to understand because they were too busy trying to control it. But strength doesn't need control. It needs purpose. If you've come this far, it means you found the truth. And that means I didn't fail you. Finish what they were afraid to start. Grandpa, I pressed the letter to my chest, eyes burning. I wasn't broken. I wasn't abandoned. I was trusted. As the sun dipped below the trees, I stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand. I opened the notepad app and began writing the first lines of a letter. My letter not to my mother, not to the court, but to the world. A testimony of inheritance not of wealth, but of identity. The courthouse lobby buzzed with quiet tension. A man flipped through legal folders near the window. A woman clutched her purse like it held her dignity. And there I was, standing at the threshold of everything that had tried to define me, and everything I was ready to redefine. The probate hearing was scheduled the day before Thanksgiving. Fitting, poetic even. Grandma sat beside me, her hand gently clasped over mine, thumb rubbing slow circles over my knuckles. Across the room sat my mother, Rachel, and a lawyer who looked like he'd expected a simple paperwork formality. They didn't look at me. Not once. Jenna didn't come. She didn't need to. Her statement was already in the file, submitted under oath. Ms. Alvarez entered the room with a folder in her hands and a calm that reminded me of the ocean still on the surface. Dangerous in depth. Today we're reviewing the estate of the late Walter Jameson. She began. Specifically, the validity of an alternate will brought forward by the named heir, Lily Jameson. She laid out 2 folders, one thick, one thin. Ours was the thick one. Evidence, testimonies, dates, the original will, Mr. Thorne's affidavit, Jenna's signed statement, even a forensic analysis showing that the updated will had been printed on a different printer than the one Grandpa used for years, something small. But telling? My mother's lawyer raised every objection he could. Mr. Jameson was elderly and confused. The family had only his best interests at heart. There's no proof this alternate will was his final intent. But then Ms. Alvarez held up the envelope with Grandpa's handwritten letter, the one marked, "For when you're ready." This letter was sealed, found in his private study. The handwriting has been authenticated. The context supports the timeline. She looked over her glasses. And frankly, The clarity of this man's love for the petitioner is unmistakable. My mother shifted in her seat. I met her eyes for the first time in weeks and saw something new. Not disdain, not rage, something quieter. Defeat. The gavel came down once, light but final. We will move forward in revalidating the original will. Assets will be reassigned to reflect Mr. Jameson's original instructions. Hearing adjourned. Just like that. It was done. Outside. The air smelled like cold pavement and falling leaves. The sky had cleared, and the trees along the courthouse steps glowed like fire orange, yellow, and red, lit by the autumn sun. Grandma looped her arm through mine. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted, and it was true. I didn't feel victorious. I felt real, for the first time in years. That night, I sat at Grandpa's old desk and wrote an email I had been drafting in my head for days. The subject line was simple: what Thanksgiving should be. The body of the message told the story not in legalese, but in emotion. About growing up in a house where I was present but never seen. About the man who gave me a name when others gave me silence. About how truth, once buried, always finds light. I sent it to 5 newspapers. I thought maybe one would read it. 2 published it. By morning, it was everywhere. The story hit a nerve. Not because it was rare, but because it was familiar. People commented, emailed, shared their own stories being cut out, dismissed, replaced, invalidated by the people meant to love them the most. People who were adopted, people who were stepchildren, people who were scapegoated, gaslit, or cast aside. My inbox flooded. The piece was shared on podcasts, quoted in parenting blogs. A therapist reached out asking to use it in her course on family trauma. And then came something unexpected. An email from a community foundation. "We read your story. Would you consider starting a grant in your grandfather's name for students who come from displaced or adopted backgrounds?" I read the message twice. Then I burst into tears. 1 week later, I registered the Walter Jameson Legacy Grant with Grandma's help and Jenna's silent backing. It was small, modest funds at first, but we launched it with one goal: to remind people that being chosen should never make you feel like a secret. On Thanksgiving Day, I woke up early and walked through the Willow Street house. It felt different now. Not haunted, not heavy, just settled. The dining room table had been wiped clean, dusted, reset, not with place cards for names I didn't trust, but with mismatched mugs, homemade napkin holders, and the sound of new voices. I had invited 3 local students from a nearby college, young adults who had aged out of the foster system. One of them, Kira, brought sweet potato pie. Another, Marcus, showed up with a guitar. Grandma wore her pearl earrings and an apron that said "Head of Household" again. I stood at the head of the table, holding up my glass of cider. To those who were told they didn't belong, I said. To those who made room anyway. And to those who learned that family isn't given, it's built. We clinked glasses. And for the first time ever, I understood Thanksgiving. Not as a performance, but as a promise. A year later, I returned to the house on Willow Street this time, with no weight in my chest, no trembling in my hands. The wind was crisp, the leaves crunching beneath my boots, and the porch swing moved gently in the breeze like it was waiting for someone to sit down and listen. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like mine. Inside, the walls were warmer now, painted soft sage green with family photos restored, but not the old ones. New ones. Me and Grandma at the scholarship launch. Me standing in front of the courthouse with my binder of documents in one hand and my chin raised. Me with the first group of students who received the Walter Jameson Legacy Grant. Each one handpicked not because they had the highest grades or best resumes, but because they had lived through fracture and still dared to build something whole. The journals Grandpa left me now sat on the living room bookshelf, carefully preserved. I hadn't read every page yet. I was saving them like little pieces of him I could unwrap when the world got too loud again. Thanksgiving approached quietly. No grand plans, no formal invitations. But still people showed up. Grandma, of course, arrived first, carrying a pot of cranberry sauce and her sharp commentary about how store-bought stuffing was a sin. Then Jenna knocked on the door. She was different now. Softer. Steadier. She brought 2 pies, 1 pumpkin, 1 pecan, and her apology folded into every layer of crust. She didn't ask to stay. She just helped set the table. There were new faces, too. Marcus and Kira from last year returned with friends. A young man named Tommy who had spent his teen years couch surfing after being rejected by his foster family. A single mom named Raina who was putting herself through nursing school while raising twin toddlers. And a trans girl named Erin who told me over pie that it was the first holiday she hadn't been misgendered in 3 years. I let their voices fill the space. Their laughter. Their stories. And as we passed dishes down the table, no one asked who was real family. Because everyone was. Later that evening, after the last plate had been washed and the candles had burned low, I sat on the front porch beside Grandma. The night was cold, but we had blankets, and tea, and peace. She pulled a small box from her coat pocket and handed it to me. "I've been holding on to this," she said. "Didn't know when the right time was. Figured maybe now." I opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. A copy of the one Jenna had first brought the one of Grandpa and me. Mid-laugh. Party hats slightly crooked. But this time, it had a frame. And behind the glass, someone had written in delicate script, "Day 1 of the family we chose." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "Did you write that I asked?" "No," Grandma said, smiling. "Jenna did." I held the photo to my chest, heart full, as the stars blinked into the November sky. I thought about how much had changed in 1 year, how the table had gone from cold porcelain and forced smiles to something real mismatched chairs, loud laughter, and arms reaching for seconds without apology. How I had gone from trying to fit to finally belonging. Not because they let me in, but because I walked in anyway. Some people spend their whole lives chasing the approval of those who refuse to give it. Others learn to stop knocking on locked doors. I had done both. Now, I was building a house with open windows. I was never their secret. I was their mirror. And once they smashed it, I finally saw myself clearly. The family we choose often begins where the family we were born into ends. And that is where I began. Some wounds aren't visible. They live in the pauses between words. The empty chairs at family dinners. The photo frames where someone's always cropped out. But healing doesn't come from forcing those who rejected us to finally see our worth. It comes from realizing we were never unworthy to begin with. Love, when real, doesn't ask you to shrink. And family, true family, isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who protects your name when no one else will. Sometimes, the deepest belonging starts with walking away from those who made you question if you ever belonged at all. If this story moved you, or reminded you of your own journey, don't forget to subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. We tell stories like this not just to entertain, but to remind each other, you're not alone, you're not invisible, and your story matters. Let us know in the comments, what moment helped you finally choose your own peace over someone else's approval? Until next time, take care of your truth. It's the one thing no one can rewrite.